My parents abandoned me at 10 and left me with Grandma. Then years later they suddenly returned at her funeral pretending we could be a family again. Okay, so I don't really do this, but I'm going to post because honestly I feel like I'm losing it a little just thinking about all this again. The way people act like it was all fine is wild to me. So, I don't know, here's my story I guess. When I was 10, I remember this one summer day. The sky was way too bright. My mom was acting super happy, which was weird because she's not usually that type of mom. She's more the quiet but snappy kind. My dad was kind of the same, making dumb jokes and nudging me like he was trying too hard. We were driving to Grandma's house, and they had the radio up kind of loud. I remember this because my mom kept telling my dad to turn it down and then doing it herself, like she had to control everything. I wasn't even supposed to be at Grandma's that day. It was just random. I had my backpack, but nothing else really. Just my tablet, my charger, and a hoodie. I didn't have any of my stuff, not even my toothbrush. We pulled up to Grandma's, and my dad said, "Go ahead, we'll be right in." But they came in after me, and Grandma was already at the door. You could tell she wasn't expecting them, or maybe she was, but it was still weird for her. Anyway, they barely said hi. They just said they'd be back after running some errands. My mom kept giving Grandma these looks, and Grandma just shrugged at her. Nobody was really saying anything real. I went along with it because I was 10 and I figured whatever, adults are weird, they'll come back. I sat on the couch and watched Grandma do her crossword. She kept asking if I wanted a snack. I kept checking the driveway, thinking I'd see their car, but nothing. The first couple of hours, I just played games on my tablet and tried not to think about it. But when it got dark and they weren't back, I started asking Grandma, "When are they coming back?" She would just say, "Soon, any day now," really quietly, and she'd pat my hand. That first night I slept in Grandma's guest room, which was really just a storage room with an old twin bed. I kept waking up thinking I heard their car. For the first week I kept thinking they'd show up. I kept bugging Grandma. She'd just sigh and say, "They'll be back. You'll see." But she didn't look at me when she said it. I started school 2 weeks later and I had to use Grandma's address for everything. She bought me a lunchbox that had puppies on it, which was honestly embarrassing, but I didn't say anything. At school, the teachers kept asking about my parents, like, "When are they picking you up?" I just said they were busy, which was true, I guess, but in that way where nothing was true. Kids at school didn't really get it. One girl, Sydney, kept asking me who I lived with now, and I just said, "My grandma, for now." She acted like that was normal. I tried to text my mom from Grandma's old phone, but I didn't get any replies. My dad's number just rang and rang. A couple of times Grandma would get letters from my parents, actual letters, which was so weird even then. My mom's handwriting, my dad's dumb jokes in the margins. They always said they were sorting things out and that they'd be back soon, but nothing ever happened. Sometimes I'd hear Grandma on the phone late at night talking low, and I knew it was my mom. I could hear her voice, but I couldn't make out the words. Once I heard her say, "She's asking about you," and then she just said, "I know, but she's your kid." After that, Grandma would act all tired and get really strict about bedtime. The thing is, people think when you get abandoned, it's this big dramatic moment, but really it's just boring most of the time. You just wait and nothing happens. Nobody tells you anything, and you just make up stories in your head. I kept telling myself they were coming back, that this was just a weird blip, but I knew even then that something was off. Grandma did her best, I guess. She was old, and she had her own stuff going on. She tried to make my favorite food, but she always made it wrong. She wasn't mean, but she didn't really know what to do with a kid. Sometimes she'd snap at me if I forgot my chores, or if I left my shoes out. She'd get mad, then later she'd give me candy, like she felt bad. She had her own friends, ladies she'd see for bingo or something. Sometimes they'd come over and they'd all gossip and laugh, and I'd just sit in my room playing games or scrolling on my tablet, feeling like a ghost. One time, maybe a year later, I tried to bring it up with Grandma, like, "When are they coming?" She just looked at me and said, "You know, I don't have the answer to that." I didn't ask again after that for a while. The only time I saw my parents' names was when they sent birthday cards, which was honestly the most awkward thing because they'd always say something like, "Hope to see you soon. Love, Mom and Dad," and put $20 in there. After a while, I just stopped opening them and left them in my desk. Sometimes my Aunt Denise would call and ask if I wanted to stay over at her house, but she always sounded like she was just doing it so Grandma would owe her a favor. I did stay once, but her kids were way younger than me, and honestly, it was boring. Nobody ever really asked me if I was okay, just if I was being good for Grandma. At school, I started getting in trouble for dumb stuff, like talking back or not doing assignments. I remember in 5th grade, my teacher told me I was acting out, and I just shrugged. I didn't tell anyone what happened, because what would I even say? I started lying a lot. I told people my parents had to travel for work or that they were in another city for a while. Nobody really believed me, but nobody cared enough to say anything either. I got good at dodging questions or just laughing it off. I started hanging out with kids who didn't ask too many questions. We'd skate in the parking lot behind the library or just sit around talking about dumb stuff. I told them I lived with my grandma because my parents were having issues, which was technically true, I guess. Sometimes, though, someone would push too far, and I'd get mad and shove them. Once, I shoved Lance into a bush because he kept making jokes about my mystery parents. He didn't talk to me for a week after that. Nobody snitched, but I got called into the office anyway. The counselor asked if everything was okay at home. I just said I was tired. They didn't push it, so yeah, that's kinda how it went for years. Grandma and me, her house full of weird old furniture and doilies, me doing my homework at the kitchen table, her making soup that always tasted like onions. The only real fights we had were about chores, or if I forgot to call her when I was late. Sometimes I'd get mad and say I wanted to go home, but she'd just say, "This is your home now." I hated that. I started spending more time online, just scrolling mindlessly, watching stupid videos, texting people I barely knew. I guess that's when I started realizing this was just my life now, that nobody was coming to get me. I'd see my friends post family pictures, and it would just hit me how weird my life was compared to theirs. I tried to talk to Grandma about maybe calling my parents, but she'd just shake her head and say, "They'll call when they're ready," like it was all up to them. Sometimes I'd get so mad I'd just go for a walk around the block. A couple of times I left and didn't come back till after dark. Grandma would be waiting at the door, arms crossed, and she'd just say, "You scared me," and then go back to watching her shows. I knew she cared, but she never said it out loud. There was this one time when I was about 12 that my mom actually called. Grandma handed me the phone, and my mom was really awkward, asking about school and then saying she missed me. I just said, "Okay." Then she said she'd see me soon, but she never did. After that, I just stopped expecting anything. I started telling people my parents moved away and couldn't take me with them. People believe that more than the work thing, I guess. So, yeah, that's how it started. People always act like there's some big moment where you realize you've been abandoned, but it's really just a bunch of little things, like not having anyone show up for parent-teacher night or never getting picked up after practice. You just stop asking after a while. The last time I asked Grandma when they were coming back, she just looked at me and said, "Any day now," but she didn't even try to sound convincing. I think that was the day I knew she was lying and that nobody was coming. So, I don't know, that's part one, I guess. If anyone's actually interested, there's a lot more. First update, not gonna lie, I didn't think I'd actually post part two, but whatever. Here goes. I don't know if it's even going to make sense to people who grew up normal, but it's what happened. I'm probably going to ramble. Sorry in advance. So, 2021. Grandma's health had been going downhill since before the pandemic, but it got worse that year, fast. She'd been in and out of the hospital, one thing after another. Every time I asked if my parents knew, she'd say not to bother them. I was 19 by then, doing most of the stuff around the house, figuring out bills and groceries, but people just assumed I was fine because I was mature, laugh out loud. Some of my friends started ghosting because I never had time to go out. Or maybe I just stopped trying. The house would get so quiet at night. Just the TV on and Grandma sleeping in her chair. Sometimes she'd wake up confused and call me by my mom's name. I guess that's not super relevant, but it's weird. Like you're the only person left, and you're still not really seen. When Grandma actually died, it was just me and her in the house. I had to call my Aunt Denise, and she was the one who told everyone else. The day of the funeral was so strange, like the weather was too nice for a funeral, sunny and windy. I kept thinking how Grandma would yell at me for not wearing a jacket. I was angry about the whole thing, but also numb in this way that doesn't make sense. I just wanted to get it over with. Here's where it gets wild. My parents actually showed up. I hadn't seen them in years. They never called, never visited, just sent birthday cards, and sometimes a text that was so generic it could have been for anyone. I was standing by the front of the little chapel, just waiting for people to start coming in. I looked up, and my mom was there. She looked almost the same, just older, more tired. My dad was behind her, carrying a bunch of flowers like he didn't know what else to do with his hands. They both tried to act casual, like this was just a normal family thing. My mom went in for a hug, arms out, and I stepped back. She stopped, and there was this weird silence. My dad just kind of shrugged, like, "What do you want us to do?" My Aunt Denise was glaring at them but didn't say anything. Other relatives were whispering, probably about how awkward it all was. My cousin Veda kept asking me if I was okay, but it was just that fake concern, you know, like she wanted to know the drama. I just said I was fine and went to check on the food table. The whole service was a blur. People got up and said things about Grandma, how strong she was. how much she loved her family. I was just thinking about how she never really got to rest. Not with all the stuff my parents dumped on her. My parents sat in the back, not talking to anyone. After the service, people were mingling, eating cookies, doing that thing where nobody knows what to say. My mom tried again, coming up to me and putting her hand on my shoulder. I just looked at her and said, "Why did you abandon me?" She didn't answer, just looked down at her shoes. My dad said something about how they had their reasons, but wouldn't look at me either. I guess this is where it got messy. My Aunt Denise started in like, "You have no right to show up like this after all these years." My mom tried to say she was always thinking about me, but Denise just laughed, like, "Sure you were." One of the older relatives, I think her name's Rita, stepped in and said, "This isn't the time." My mom looked like she might cry, but honestly, I was just annoyed. It all got louder. My dad tried to say they never meant for things to turn out like this, but then Denise was yelling that Grandma deserved better. My mom said something about how hard it was for them, like they were the victims. I just walked away. I went outside and stood by the little parking lot, scrolling on my phone, not even seeing the screen. Someone slammed the door inside, probably Denise. I heard my cousin Veda calling my name, but I ignored her. She followed me out and asked if I wanted to come back in, but I said I needed air. A few people came out and tried to talk, but mostly it was just that awkward silence. My parents eventually came out too, standing by their car like they didn't know if they should leave or not. My mom kept glancing at me like she was waiting for me to do something. Finally, she came over and tried one more time to hug me. I stepped back again and she looked hurt, but I didn't care. My dad said, "We should talk. You're old enough now." I just said, "Talk about what?" He didn't answer, just looked at my mom. She said, "We did what we thought was best, that we weren't ready, that you were better off with Grandma." I asked, "How is leaving your kid better for anyone?" She didn't answer, just wiped her eyes and walked away. People started leaving, saying their goodbyes, giving me those awkward hugs where you can tell they don't actually want to get involved. Denise pulled me aside and said I didn't have to talk to them if I didn't want to, that I was allowed to be mad. She said she always thought what they did was wrong, but that nobody wanted to make it a big family drama. I just nodded. I didn't want to talk about it anymore. After most people were gone, my parents were still standing by their car. My mom finally got in and slammed the door. My dad stood there for a second, then got in too. They drove off. Later, when I was back inside cleaning up, Veda was scrolling through her phone, showing me pictures people posted from the funeral. She acted like it was all just another event, like she didn't get why I was upset. I told her to stop, and she just shrugged, saying she was just trying to help. I found a text on my phone from my mom. "Hey, sweetie, been thinking about you." I didn't reply. For the next few days, people kept messaging, calling, asking if I was okay, but it was all surface level. Nobody asked what I actually wanted. Denise offered to let me stay with her, but I said I was fine at Grandma's house. She said I was stubborn, just like my mom. The house was so empty now, just me and Grandma's old stuff. I kept expecting her to yell at me for leaving the lights on. My parents didn't call or text again, not for weeks. The weirdest part is how other people acted like it was just a weird family thing, like, "Oh, families are complicated, you'll work it out." But nobody actually wanted to hear what happened. They just wanted it to go away so they didn't have to pick sides. I started going through Grandma's stuff, finding old pictures, letters, random junk she kept in every drawer. I found some cards from my parents to her saying, "Thanks for helping out. Nothing about me." One day I went to the store and ran into an old neighbor, Roland, and he asked if my parents were back in town now. I just said no, they were just here for the funeral. He gave me that look, like he wanted to ask more, but didn't. I kept getting these little reminders that I was basically on my own now. The bills came in, the fridge emptied, stuff broke, I fixed what I could, YouTubed the rest. Sometimes, Denise came by to check on me, but mostly she just dropped off food and went. I started to get angry at everything, not just my parents, but everyone who acted like this was okay. I started snapping at Veda, ignoring calls, skipping group chats. My parents didn't come back, but a few weeks later, I got another text from my mom. "Can we please talk?" Just once. I deleted it. So, yeah, that's how the funeral went. Everyone pretending, but nothing actually changing. If you're still reading, I guess you'll want to know what happened when they tried to talk to me again. That's a whole other mess. I'll post about it if people care, but honestly, I'm just tired. Second update, so yeah, still me, Eliza. If you read the first two parts, you probably know by now I don't do neat endings or whatever, so don't expect some big catharsis here. This is just what happened, messy as it is. So this is 2022, like a year after Grandma's funeral. The house still smelled like her sometimes, like powder and old paper and soup that's been cooked too long. I was still living there because I didn't know where else I'd go, and, not gonna lie, the whole adulting thing was not as fun or freeing as TikTok makes it look. I was just barely keeping up with bills. Still fighting with Denise on and off. She acted like she was my mom now, but not in a good way. More like, are you eating enough? Did you pay the water bill? Why are you up so late? And then she'd just leave me on read for days. So, anyway, after months of nothing but a couple of hope you're well texts from my mom, I never replied because what would I even say? Out of nowhere, she started messaging again, like every week, then every couple of days. Hey, sweetie. Hope you're okay. Thinking of you. Can we talk? Then my dad started too, but he was less sweetie and more like, we should talk. You can't avoid us forever. I don't know why, but it made me angrier than just being ignored. Like now they suddenly cared because Grandma was gone, and there was nobody else left to do the emotional work. So, I ignored them for a while. But eventually, Denise started pushing me to answer. She said, just meet up with them. Get it over with. Maybe they'll leave you alone. Veda, my cousin, for people who forgot, said she'd want to know why if it was her. I didn't even know what I wanted, but I was tired of everyone acting like I was the villain for not wanting to hear them out. So, finally, I texted my mom back, super short, what do you want? She replied like, so relieved, saying they just wanted to talk, have dinner, maybe clear the air. I said fine, public place. 1 hour, that's it. She tried to get me to come to their house. I guess they moved back or maybe they just never left, honestly no idea. But I said no, public or nothing. So we met at this really dull chain restaurant, the kind with laminated menus and sticky tables. I got there early because I knew if I was late, I'd have to walk in while they were already watching me. I sat by the window, scrolling through my phone, just doom-scrolling Twitter. Then I saw their car pull up. My mom got out first. She was dressed up like it was some big event. My dad was behind her, wearing a shirt I swear he's had since I was a kid. They walked in together, but not close, no holding hands or anything. They saw me and waved, like we were just catching up after a vacation or something. My mom tried to smile and sat next to me. My dad sat across. She started with, you look so grown up. I just nodded because what was I supposed to say to that? The waitress came over. I ordered coffee. My dad just got water. My mom tried to get me to order food, but I said I ate already. She looked offended for half a second, then smiled again. So, there was this painfully awkward small talk. How's the house? How's school? Are you working? How's Denise? I just gave short answers. Finally, I said, why are we here? My dad sighed and said they wanted to be a family again. I laughed, which was maybe mean, but I couldn't help it. I said, you're about 10 years too late for that. My mom put her hand on mine, said they made mistakes, but they always loved me. I asked, then why did you leave me with Grandma and never come back? She said they thought it was best for me, that they weren't ready, that things were really hard back then. She kept talking about stress, how they fought all the time, how I was difficult. She actually said that. I almost choked. They thought I'd be better off somewhere safe. I said, so, you just dumped me because I was inconvenient. She said it wasn't like that, but she couldn't really explain what it was like. My dad got mad at this point. He said I didn't understand what it was like for them, that they were working all the time, fighting, barely scraping by. He said Grandma was better equipped to handle a kid. I said, yeah, she basically raised me alone, and you just stopped being parents. He said, you never saw how hard it was for us. I told him you never saw how hard it was for me. He got quiet, then said I should be grateful I had a roof over my head. I said I would have been grateful for parents who didn't disappear. More awkward silence. My mom tried to change the subject, saying, well, we're here now. We want to make it right. I asked why now, she said, because Grandma is gone, and they realized how much time they lost. I said, so, it's not about me, it's about your guilt. My dad said, don't talk to your mother like that. I said, or what? You'll leave again? He slammed his hand on the table. People were staring. The waitress came over, asked if everything was okay. My mom said, we're fine, just family stuff. My dad looked like he wanted to yell, but he didn't. I said, I'm not interested in playing happy families for your benefit. My mom said, you don't mean that, you're just angry. I said, I mean every word. She tried to touch my arm. I pulled away. She looked hurt, but I was done feeling bad about their feelings. My dad said, you're being cruel. I said, I'm being honest. Finally, he stood up and said, you'll regret this. I said, maybe, but not as much as you should. He walked out. My mom just sat there looking at me like I was a stranger. She said, please, can't we start over? I said, you didn't want me when I was a kid. Why do you want me now? She said, people change. I said, not enough. I got up to leave. She grabbed my sleeve. I shook her off. She said, don't go. I just walked out. As I was leaving, I heard her crying. I felt nothing, just tired. For the next week, my mom sent these long texts about how she's sorry, how she wishes things were different, how she just wants to talk. My dad sent one that just said, "You broke your mother's heart." I blocked their numbers. Then they started messaging me on Instagram, like, "Can we please talk just once?" I didn't answer. Veda came over and said I was being too harsh. I said, "Maybe, but it's my choice." She said, "They're still your parents." I said, "And I'm still their daughter," but that didn't matter to them for years. I started seeing people from high school again, but it was weird. They all asked about my parents because everyone heard something at the funeral. I just said, "We're not close." Some people looked at me like I was doing something wrong, like I should be the one to fix it. I started noticing little things, like how people acted around me now. Denise treated me more like an adult, but she still nagged. Veda stopped coming by as much. I was alone a lot, but it's not the worst thing. I got used to the quiet, to just handling things myself. I heard from my parents again, this time an actual letter in the mail. My mom's handwriting said she's sorry, that she loves me, that she hopes I'll call. I didn't reply. I thought about it, but I didn't. I started doing more things for myself, fixing the leaky sink, learning how to budget, taking care of the house. Sometimes I got mad and slammed the kitchen drawers, just like Grandma used to. Sometimes, I yelled at Denise over text, then apologized later. Sometimes, I just sat on the porch and scrolled TikTok for hours, not really seeing anything. So, yeah, that's the second chance talk. Not exactly a happy update, but it is what it is. I don't know what's next. But I guess that's part 3. If you want to know what happens after, let me know. I'm not sure it gets any better, but whatever. It's real. Last update alright, so this is probably the last time I'll post about this whole mess. To be honest, I wasn't even sure if I should, but a couple of people DM'd and said it helped them, so whatever. Here goes. If you're new, I'm Eliza, the one whose parents left her with Grandma at 10 and just dipped. If you read the last parts, you know how my parents suddenly popped up again after Grandma died and tried to act like we're all good. It's been a year since that whole dinner thing where they wanted a fresh start. If I'm being real, nothing about it is fresh or a start. But here's what went down since then. So, 2023 started off weird. I figured after I blocked my parents and ignored their messages, they'd just eventually give up and disappear again. That's what they're good at, right? Nope. Instead, they switched to every possible way to reach me. DMs on Instagram, even a Facebook friend request from my dad, which is so wild because he hates social media and used to rant about kids these days glued to their screens. The messages always said the same thing. Can we please talk just once? Sometimes it was longer, like your mom misses you so much, or we're sorry for everything, but mostly just that short, desperate line. The first time I actually saw my mom in person again after the funeral was by complete accident. I was in the grocery store, hoodie up, earbuds in, just grabbing stuff for the week. I saw her 2 aisles over by the canned soup. She spotted me, and her whole face just lit up in this way, like she was about to cry and win the lottery at the same time. She started walking over, saying my name. I just turned and walked the other way. She followed me, calling my name louder, and I legit had to duck out the fire exit by the bakery just to get away. Then she texted me not even 2 minutes later, "Can we please talk just once?" After that, I started seeing them everywhere. Not in a stalkery way, but like, suddenly, they were at all the family stuff again. Denise's birthday? They were there. Veda's graduation? They showed up and acted like everything was fine, like it was all water under the bridge. I literally stopped going to some stuff just to avoid the drama. Veda got mad at me for skipping her grad dinner. She said I was being petty, but then she admitted my mom cornered her in the bathroom and started crying about how she just wanted her family back. It's like I'm supposed to be the bigger person, but I'm the only one who ever had to actually live with the consequences of their choices. Even Denise tried to back me up, saying I didn't owe them anything, but I could tell she was tired of being in the middle. The worst was Easter. Denise tried to do this big family lunch because she thought maybe enough time had passed, and everyone would just be civil. She kept asking if I'd come, saying maybe things could be, I don't know, not good, but at least not a total train wreck. I said I'd come if my parents promised to just leave me alone, like, don't try to talk to me, just act normal. She said she'd tell them. So, I went. I brought a pie because I'm not a monster, and Denise always said I should bring something. It was awkward from the second I walked in. My parents were at the table. My mom was smiling way too big. My dad stood up, like he thought he should hug me. I just walked past them and handed the pie to Denise, who looked like she regretted everything. Veda tried to joke about it, saying, "Look at you being all domestic," but nobody laughed. We sort of got through lunch. My dad kept looking at me. My mom kept trying to join in my conversations. At one point, she put her hand on my arm and said, "Can we please just talk?" Just us. I pulled my arm away and said, not today or any day, actually. My dad said, you're being selfish. I said, I learned from the best. Veda snorted, which didn't help, and my mom slammed her fork down. She stood up and said, I can't keep doing this, and left the table. My dad followed her, but not before glaring at me and muttering something about respect. Denise was silent for a second, then just started clearing the table. Veda mumbled, well, that went well, and went to help. The rest of the afternoon was just people walking around on eggshells. My mom sat in her car for like 20 minutes, just staring at her phone. My dad finally got in, and they left. Denise told me I did nothing wrong, but I could tell she wished it was easier. She said, they're not bad people. They just made bad choices. I said, that's not my problem to fix. She said, I know, but it's still sad. I said, yeah, it is. Sometimes I wonder if I'm being too harsh. But then I remember every birthday, every parent night, every day I sat by the window waiting for a car that never pulled up. Nobody ever apologized for that, not really. My mom just kept saying she was overwhelmed, that she thought I'd be better off with Grandma. My dad said he was trying to hold everything together and couldn't do both. They acted like I should be grateful they let Grandma raise me, like that was some huge gift. I see people online talking about forgive and forget or family is everything, and all I can think is they never had to live in a house full of someone else's broken promises. I started therapy for a bit, not because of them, but because I just felt like I was angry all the time. My therapist said it's okay to not want a relationship, that I get to decide what's healthy for me. Sometimes I still feel guilty, especially when I'm fixing up Grandma's house little by little, painting the kitchen, replacing the old curtains, getting rid of all the weird knickknacks that made it look like a museum. It's not much, but it's mine, I guess. Sometimes I find myself saying things the way she used to, yelling at myself for leaving lights on or letting the faucet drip. I wish she was here. She wasn't perfect, but she never pretended to be anything she wasn't. Sometimes Veda comes over, and we eat junk food and watch dumb movies and don't talk about family at all. Sometimes Denise drops off groceries and nags about my lawn, but it's fine. I know she means well. My parents are still around, but less now. They still send the same message every couple of months. Sometimes my mom leaves a voicemail and I don't even listen. Last month, my dad sent a letter. He wrote that they're getting older, that they want to know me, that nobody's perfect. He said, you only get one family. I almost replied, but I didn't. I know people expect some neat ending like, oh, I forgave them and now we're close, or I cut them off forever and now I'm thriving. It's not like that. It's just quiet. I wake up, I work, I pay bills, I hang out with people who get it. Sometimes I think about answering, but I haven't yet. Maybe one day I will, maybe not. So that's it. Not really an ending, but it's real. Thanks if you read all this. I don't know if it helps anyone, but at least it's not just in my head anymore. For everyone who keeps asking, why not just meet up? Why not give them another chance? Why not at least hear them out one more time? Here's the real reason, and maybe it'll make sense, maybe it won't. It's not just that they left me or that they missed birthdays or school stuff or all the little things everyone else takes for granted. It's that when they came back, they still made it about them, like every single time it's them asking for forgiveness so they can feel better about themselves. Not once have they actually asked what I went through or even just said, I'm sorry I hurt you, tell me what you need. They talk about being overwhelmed, about stress, about how hard it was for them, but nobody forced them to leave. And they never once tried to come back for real until Grandma died, and I was the only person left. I don't want people in my life who only want me when it's convenient, or when they're lonely, or because it makes them feel less guilty. I want people who actually see me, who care about what I want, who don't try to flip everything around so I'm the one who has to fix things. They had years to reach out, to show up, to make it right, and they didn't. Now they just want me to let it go because it's easier for them. I'm not interested in being someone's second choice or their redemption arc or their emotional cleanup crew. If they ever actually cared about how their choices affected me, if they ever listened without making it about their own pain, maybe things could be different. But they haven't. And honestly, I don't think they ever will. So yeah, that's why. Not out of spite, not because I want revenge, just because I finally get to choose who has access to me. And right now, they don't deserve it. Maybe that'll change someday, I don't know. But for now, I'm good with my decision.